Hi, welcome to my channel if you're new here, or welcome back if you're a subscriber. So we have a brand new video for you, and in this video I'm going to talk about 5 of my woodworking purchases that I regret. So just a brief bit of context. This video is not necessarily talking about a specific product or a brand, or we're not throwing anyone under the bus here. I just want to talk about things that I purchased and maybe I thought it would be more useful to my business, and it just didn't prove to be that didn't prove to be the case. Or things that I purchased, and then after I had a little bit more experience under my belt, I realized, oh, I think I would like this other thing a lot better, or I wish I had spent my money in a different way. So as you may know or may not know, my business is retail. I make wood products and I sell them online, and that is my bread and butter. And I have not invested a lot of my profits back into my woodworking. I have actually been pretty conservative in terms of the tools that I bought and things that I've done. I just have, my personal preference is to do other things with the money that I make from this business, other than putting thousands and thousands of dollars into tools. So that's just a little bit about me. But it kind of relates to this video because I have kept my operation very simple, and I haven't invested a lot of money in tools, although I have bought a few expensive things in the last couple of years, like my Festool sander or my drum sander, but those things have been amazing and I use them all the time, and it really has made a difference in the efficiency of my operation. So that is where I like to spend my money, and beyond that, I don't just go out and buy the next big thing just so I can have it around. There are a lot of things on my wish list that I may eventually or over time add to my operation, but I'm certainly not going to do that until the tool can absolutely pay for itself through my business, more than pay for itself, and it can make me money, because that's what I'm here to do. So let's dive into this video of my 5 woodworking purchases that I regret. And I also want to quickly just add that I have a lot of things in my wood shop that I started out with, and then over time I've been able to upgrade. So I'm not including things like that on my list because, you know, I started at a certain place and I only wanted to invest a certain amount of money. Like, for example, my first sander was a very, very cheap sander. I don't even remember what brand it was, but it wasn't even an orbital sander. And then from there, I stepped up to the DeWalt. And I felt like when I was buying the DeWalt, I felt like, okay, I made it. I really made it. And now I have a Festool sander and I'm like, nobody can tell me anything because I have truly made it now. So all of those steps that you take as a woodworker or in anything that you're doing as a hobby or a business or whatever it is, those are essential steps to get you to where you want to go. So there have been a lot of things that I purchased, I no longer use, maybe I sold it or donated it. But those aren't regrets because those were an important part of my journey. So I'm not including things like that in this video. Okay, so let's talk about my first and probably my biggest regret. And you can see it here beside me. This is the Bosch Benchtop router table. I think it was around $200. So as you can see, there's so much stuff piled on it that it has just become basically a storage unit, and it's in the middle of the floor and it's just constantly in the way, and I'm obviously never using it. So I purchased this very, very early when I just started doing woodworking basically as a hobby, and I wanted to make a cabinet in my house and make cabinet doors. And I don't know what possessed me to think that like one of my first woodworking projects should be a built-in cabinet with cabinet doors, but I did it. And so that's the reason why I bought this, to make my cabinet doors. And it did work well. The cabinet looks good, but I just have not used it since. I find that this benchtop stand is too low to use it on the ground, but it's too high to use it on the bench. So it's just like, it's an awkward thing. And the biggest thing for me is that I find that if I don't have a tool like accessible and ready to use, if it requires a lot of time like setting it up or digging it out or dusting it off, as would be the case with this, that I'm just not going to use it. So I like to have things handy if I have any intention of using them, which this one is not. So I'm hoping that I did see another video on YouTube where a guy reused this top for the router table to make to build a nice cabinet. He also had the same criticism that it's too low to work on the ground but too high to work on a bench. So I might do something like that to kind of take it apart and build it into a proper like router cabinet type of thing. Or just kind of find a way to build a stand that I can at least mount it and it can have a dedicated home where I can actually use it. Because I think if my router was set up in that way, I think that I would use it a lot more often, but now I just always go to my palm router if I just have some small routing jobs that I want to do. So it's just using that has been a lot easier for me. But I hope that someday I can make use of at least part of this router table, but it's been a pretty big regret overall. Okay, number 2 on my list, I think probably a lot of woodworkers will be able to relate to this, but that would be for me the different types of wood finishes that I bought kind of on an impulse, especially earlier in my woodworking journey. I just really didn't know much about finishing wood, and it was something that I just had to kind of experiment with and learn through experience. So I definitely bought a lot of things that are kind of just now living on a shelf. They may have been there for a few years. Perhaps they're not even usable anymore, but I think just like finishes are something that it's something quick and little that you can just go pick up, but it's like if you use it once and you realize, oh, I don't like this at all, then it's just a total waste. But it's not something, you know, I don't want to throw mine away. Like I'm thinking, oh, maybe someday I'll like it. Maybe someday I'll change my mind, or maybe someday I'll be working with a different type of wood and it will work really perfectly with that. So that's something that has been kind of a regret, but I think that now with the more woodworking experience that I have, I've kind of settled on the things that I really like and that work really well for me personally. So I've kind of figured that out, and I haven't really wasted a lot on finishes recently, but that's definitely something that happened early on. All right, so let me get out my next regret. This one is a bit of a weird one. And it's, again, just like a very small thing. This isn't like a significant financial regret. I could very easily just go purchase some new ones and get over what my kind of grievance with this is. But basically these are metal rulers. And I added this to my list because it's just one of those things that, again, you kind of buy it on an impulse. And you just kind of look at it at first glance and you're like, okay, this looks good, like a set of metal rulers. I think it came with like 4 or 5. I just bought it on Amazon, and it's like, oh yeah, that's definitely gonna work for me. But after I had it home and once I started really using it, the thing that bothers me about these rulers is that it doesn't start at 0. I wish that it would start at 0 and not have this little like 1/8 of an inch on the end, because when I just like put it on my bench, then I'm not at 0. And there are just a lot of instances where it bothers me that the end is not placed at 0. How many times am I gonna say that? But that's just like something so small. And again, I could just buy new rulers that are that way. The reason why I feel so strongly about this, I think, is because I initially bought like one very small metal ruler at Home Depot or something, and it did start at 0. So I just got used to using that ruler, and then I started liking that ruler a lot. And then another woodworker recommended to me that they often use metal rulers instead of a tape measure for like smaller measurements and stuff like that, for more accuracy. And so I was like, okay, I should do that too. And so again, it's just one of those little things that you didn't really maybe think it all the way through, or there's just like something little that you didn't realize at the time that you were purchasing it, but once you put it into use, you're like, okay, something else would be a better fit for me. So that's my number 3, is metal rulers that don't start exactly at 0. All right, the next one, which has been kind of probably sitting here in frame, but this one I'm a little bit torn on how I feel about this. But at the end of the day, I decided to put it on my regret list. So this is the Rockler portable drill guide. Now, I do use it. I definitely do use it, and for certain things it works really well. But it's a little bit finicky depending on how you want to use it. And you kind of have to play around with it a lot. Like you can attach some boards on the bottom to be able to make it more useful for like different sizes or shapes of projects that you're working with. But for me, this was $200. And they do have other accessories that go with it, which are even more money. And I just felt like I spent a lot of money on this, that I maybe would have been happier just to put that money towards like an actual drill press. Even though I don't necessarily have the space for it, I could have probably gotten a smaller one, and I could have just found or made space for it. So this is, yeah, I just feel like it's a bit high, even though I do use it and it works for me because I don't have a true drill press. But I maybe should have just applied that money in a different way. So that's the story on this. And maybe if I spent more time playing around with it, I could make it work in different types of situations. But I just feel like sometimes like the space here, it's just not enough. Again, I know you can put blocks on the bottom and kind of like make jigs for it to make it work better, but I don't know, it just feels like a lot of work. And so that's the drill press. Now it does work. I do a lot of small things, so I do like it from that sense. But even with smaller things, it's like kind of hard to get your hands in here and be holding it in a stable way and make sure your piece is secure. So it's just, and they do sell a vise for it, but then that's, I think, another $100, which is just like, at that point, you've got a lot of money into just this little tiny thing. So that's my kind of on the fence. I think I regret it, but it does work for me. I don't use it that often, and I probably would use something else more often, and eventually I probably will end up buying a drill press. Okay, my last regret, this is kind of a little bit specific to what I do since I'm more in the retail space and I am holding a little bit of inventory, which I'm selling or I'm using to create the products that I'm selling online. But I think other people can also relate to this. So my last regret is buying certain things in bulk. Even if it's just like a little piece of hardware, or sometimes like you're buying screws or any kind of like specific hardware that you're gonna use for something. Sometimes it's like, oh, well, I can buy like the 20 pack or the 100 pack or whatever, and it's like the unit price is gonna be a lot cheaper. Like, let me just buy this in case someday I want to use it. I found that I did that in a lot of situations where it's just like I never again used those things, and now I just have to store them, even though they could be just really tiny things. So let me give you an example. Is at one point I was thinking that I can make cute stuff using like little wood beads, or like kind of like half beads, like a sphere, and not a sphere, what do you call that? Like a circle that's flat on the bottom but rounded on the top. I guess it's a sphere. I don't know, I'm confused. But anyways, I bought these like little wood cutesy things, and I bought a bunch of them, and not a bunch, I probably have like maybe 50 of them. And they're tiny, so they don't even require that much space to store. But it's just like, I have never used them. But it's just like, when I started my business, I was just thinking like of all these cutesy things I could make, and it just didn't pan out, or it was too much work, or it just wasn't realistic to make in like a retail setting or this kind of operation. So I have those kinds of things that I bought too many of them, and then I never ended up using it. Another example is that some of the products that I make, they go together with like some type of glass vase. So over the years, I've bought a lot of different types of vases, trying to make different products and create different things. Some of them sold, some of them don't. I kind of got to the place where I've narrowed things down and I know what sells. But I had so many vases just sitting on a shelf that I had bought, and I thought they would sell. And again, I bought more of them to make sure I had them on hand, and I just didn't use them. And so recently I actually donated them to a local florist. So that was a waste of money. I'm glad that I could donate them to somebody who can use them, but I didn't need to spend the money on it in the first place, probably. But again, some of this stuff, it's hard to avoid, and some of it is trial and error. As woodworkers and business people, we just don't know what's gonna be useful, what's gonna sell, or what we're gonna enjoy creating things with. So this would be my last regret, is just certain things, buying them in bulk, even if it might cost a little bit more to buy just a lower quantity to try it out, I'm gonna try to, you know, lean towards that direction in the future. Let me just buy a small amount, see if I like working with it, and then I can always buy more once it's proven itself, or once that I really know that I find enjoyment in that particular thing, or that it's useful to me. So that's my 5th regret. And some of these are not so serious, but it's maybe a little bit obscure, but kind of, this is just like a more personal, these are my regrets. So I'm interested to hear what are some things that you guys have purchased that it's just like something that's just sitting around, it's taking up space and it just wasn't useful. Share them in the comments, maybe we can learn from each other. So thank you so much for tuning in to this video. I appreciate it, and please subscribe to my channel and I'll be posting more videos in the near future. Thank you.